We are live. What's going on, everybody? How we doing? Friday, April 4th. Welcome to today's live YouTube live. How we doing? Friday, April 4th. Here we go. Here we go, everyone. How's everyone doing? If you are watching this live, let me know how you're feeling, how you're doing, what's going on emotionally, energetically. What do you feel is happening in the space? Because we're going to just sort of hop in here and just sort of see where this live goes. We don't really know where this live is going to go. All aboard the God rocket ship. So I don't know how you guys are feeling, but yeah, that's kind of where we're going to jump off from is the fucking God rocket. Robin W says, rapid cycling between Christ consciousness to feeling covered in shit. It's still funny. Someone was messaging with someone and they're just like, I feel so fucking ugly right now. Like, I feel like she's a woman and she's like, I feel like a 50-year-old like woman from the 1980s right now. And a 50-year-old woman from the 1980s is like an 80-year-old woman now. So she basically feels 80. So yeah, if you resonate or connect with what Robin said, you're cycling between Christ consciousness and covered in shit. That is very apt, Robin. I like that description. Because, you know, you guys, like, this is legitimately, and I was saying this to a friend, this is legitimately, and I know this like type of shit like freaks people out when you like say it like this, but this is legitimately the second coming of Christ. And the second coming of Christ has nothing to do with religion. It's more energetic. It's more about consciousness because, like, this, what is happening right now, you guys, this has never happened in the history of our earth. What's happening energetically and spiritually right now, this has never happened in the history of our earth. And, like, I'm just curious for anyone listening, like, do you guys fully comprehend that? Like, is that something that resonates with you, or is that even like too big of something to even be able to hold in your space? What is happening energetically and spiritually right now has literally never happened in the history of the earth. And I feel that, and just so you guys know, I think this live might be a little bit all over the place. There are some specific things I'm going to talk about, but we're just going to kind of, again, this is more of like just letting you know where we're going to go. This is more of like an energy update, talking about what's been going on with the energy, talking about some experiences that I've had that I keep witnessing in people just from working with people every single day, kind of all day, and seeing patterns and just sort of what's happening in the collective. And I think yesterday, as I was going through this pretty crazy, and I know a lot of you guys felt the energy was crazy. Yesterday, Thursday, the energy was insane. It sort of felt like the climax of, let's call it, this sort of solar eclipse portal. But really what it actually felt like is this was like the climax to what's been happening since the end of the summer. And people who are sort of really tuned into what's been happening energetically will know what I mean when we've kind of just hit the climax of what really started to move into the space kind of early September, late August. We've sort of just hit this climax of what happened, right? And so yesterday I was like sitting there in the energy and I'm like, I really hope people understand that what is happening right now has never happened in the history of the earth. What is happening energetically and spiritually has never happened in the history of the earth. And I think when you say stuff like that, it's either people aren't tuned into that or it's too big to even just be able to hold. They're like, and really what's happening is a lot of these like quote unquote woo-woo sort of energy concepts, it's infiltrating reality so much and in the physical space where it's kind of starting to move more and more to the point where it's utterly undeniable, where what is happening in these energetic processes is utterly undeniable. So this quote unquote, and I'm talking about from the vantage point of someone who is totally shut off from this, from the vantage point of someone who sees all this sort of talk as just woo-woo. It's infiltrating reality and the collective space and the collective consciousness so truly directly and purely. It's coming to the point that you can at least sort of believe what's happening. And I know a lot of people will have a hard time wrapping their head around we're in the second coming of Christ, all this sort of stuff. But people at the very least, I feel like, are starting to be like, okay, there's something really crazy that's happening. And yesterday, as I was sitting in that energy, I'm like, this has never happened. What's happening right now? This has never happened. And this is why this shit is really sort of confusing for people. This is why this shit is really sort of like liminal, where consciousness feels really, really liminal. And they sort of refer to like liminal consciousness as between two worlds. You're bridging two worlds. It's sort of basically what's happening is you're bridging the 3D and the 5D, or you're sort of bridging the human world or the human realm with sort of psychic and spiritual consciousness. And so when you feel like really liminal, meaning you don't really know what reality is anymore, you sort of feel like you're stuck in this fever dream, that really means that you're bridging the human realm and the spirit realm. And you're in the midst of those kind of consciousness beginning to converge together, right? So when you're in that really liminal space where you don't know what reality is anymore, am I dreaming? Robin says at this point, if you can't see it, it's mind breaking. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this as well, of like, you see people online, and what I will say is that when you're truly going through this, you know exactly when someone gets this or they doesn't, or you know when someone sort of gets this and they're sort of attuned to it, but not really fully. And so the thing is that when you haven't gone through it, you have no idea. And what there's actually a lot of happening in this industry, and I told you guys, I'm going to be going all over the place today. There's a lot of people that are really sort of glorifying things like ascension. They're probably the biggest one that we're sort of like titillizing, and you see people use this term and they're throwing it away, but they use divine union and sacred union. And I guarantee 90% of what you see online with people who use divine union and sacred union have never truly gone through the purification process to create that holy union, that true holy union with yourself. But it's a great marketing tool, right? Because again, usually what these people are doing is they're marketing to people who want that, but have never gone through any of it. So they have no idea to be able to vet. Is this person actually in true integrity and authenticity of what they're preaching? Like I said, you can only tell if someone's gone through this process if you've actually gone through this process, right? And so there's a lot of this industry of people using like ascension and, fifth dimensional consciousness and, talking about these eclipses and talking about fucking polarity. And really, it's just all marketing ploys, right? Maybe they've sort of like dipped a toe into this space, but they've never really gone through the purification process. And me being someone who's really gone through this process, you see all the bullshit. You see everywhere where people are within integrity of this or they're not within integrity of this. And divine union, sacred union is probably like the number one thing where everyone's like, oh my God, I'm in divine union. But do we have any idea the amount of purification that is really required to actually move into a divine union, to actually move into a sacred union? Like, do we actually understand energetically what is meant with that? And so I think that's really important to note, that as you look out into this industry, there's a lot of like people fetishizing. I can't even fucking say that word. People fetishizing about these terms like ascension and, divine union, sacred union, and sovereignty. And these words just get fucking just titty fucked. These words just get titty fucked by people in this space all the time without really actually going through this process. And what I'm actually going to say is, when you see people that are really, really, really focused on polarity, I'll tell you this, polarity teachers have not gone through this. Polarity teachers have not gone through this, because when you truly go through this, your relationship to polarity shifts. Your relationship, it becomes more about union between the energies internally than polarity. It becomes way more of like inner union, inner marriage between the energies inside of you, and way less about polarity. You look at polarity so different. So when you see people just constantly talking about polarity, 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 they haven't gone through this. They haven't truly gone through this purification process. And the number one sort of prerequisite To move into this divine union or this sacred union timeline is an inner marriage between these holy energies inside of ourselves, right? So much of this reharmonizing process is taking place inside of us. And then when we move into that place, that sort of sovereign wholeness inside of ourselves, we begin to open up to this sacred union timeline. And so where we're at right now is what you might be noticing is the pain body is trying to leave. The pain body is trying to literally be purified and fucking purged from your system. The pain body is trying to leave and be purified from your space. This is going to be an amalgamation of your stuff, of ancestral stuff, and past life stuff. That's all trying to be pulled. And Robin W. is like rapid cycling between Christ consciousness and feeling covered in shit. It's because we're going through a purification process. And what's happening is we're really sort of at this final layer. And again, this is going to happen at a different level or layer depending where you're at in your journey. And I will say this, what's happening right now, a lot of people are actually getting bitten for the first time. When I say people are getting bitten for the first time, God's fucking biting you. This is the first time for a lot of people right now because the energy is so undeniable that they're getting bitten for the first time. This is kind of like this curiosity of like, what the fuck is going on? So I'm curious, you guys, like, do you notice some people are like, what the fuck is going on with this energy? Maybe it's the first time they've really moved into that space. People are beginning to get it because, again, this is becoming more undeniable. The psychic realm, the spirit realm is infiltrating the human realm so fucking potently that it's becoming undeniable. It's becoming undeniable. And we're kind of at that space where we're finally beginning to arrive. Again, it depends on where you're at in the journey, but a big word and theme right now is arrival. This word of arrival. This word of arrival. And so what does that really mean? Like, what does that word arrival really mean? To me, what that word arrival really, really means is that you're beginning to arrive in this new consciousness, but you're beginning to arrive in it in a way that you can actually sort of hold for the first time, right? So a lot of people have been on sort of these ascension paths, but they haven't really arrived. They've had a lot of nervous system dysregulation, crazy sort of physical symptoms and illness, and it's been sort of this real internalized process where they haven't fucking been able to hold what's been going on. A lot of agitation in the nervous system, a lot of being constantly overwhelmed, a lot of like this, a lot of this. And so a big theme of what we're moving into is arrival, meaning we're beginning to actually arrive in this new consciousness. And that's partly why this shit is so confusing. Like, what the fuck is going on right now? Because we're starting to actually arrive in this consciousness. And what it will mean when you start to arrive in this consciousness is that you can actually hold this new paradigm, realm, and reality while you're really calm and still in your system. It's not like this crazy expansion. And then, because usually what happens a lot of time, we move into a crazy expansion and then we experience a massive nervous system collapse, expansion, collapse. You know, imagine all this energy, but then you collapse. But now we're actually learning, and what arrival in this consciousness begins to feel like and really mean is that you can hold this paradigm and the expansiveness of it while you're calm in your system, while you're regulated, right? While you're regulated. So it's not this massive expansion opening and then a massive collapse, which is, again, you see someone online, they're like fucking there and then they're nowhere to be seen. They're in full collapse in their system, right? So now we're trying to learn, how do we hold this while we're fully like this? How do we hold this new realm in reality? And this means a lot of different things. Like, and sort of the idea for this video came yesterday when I was literally sitting there and, you know, I've basically been on a Kundalini journey for about 5 years, you know, and so Kundalini journeys, Kundalini awakenings, really simply put, you guys, is about all your energy centers beginning to harmonize and balance together. You can move energy up and you can move energy down, right? I like to think of when energy is moving down, it usually means an integration. When energy moves down, it typically means an integration. And when energy moves up, meaning you're shooting energy up from the base of your spine. So, a lot of Kundalini awakenings, they use like the serpent or the snake, where energy sort of swirling up your spine, right? Using from the base of your spine, from your root, and you're able to swirl energy up. And so energy down is an integration. Energy up is a merging. Means when you're moving energy up, all your chakras and energy centers are beginning to harmonize and find balance. That's what it means to have a Kundalini experience, or a Kundalini awakening, is when all your centers up the front of your body and the back of your body are beginning to harmonize and find balance. And so a Kundalini experience and a Kundalini awakening is very much in sync with this kind of divine consciousness, right? And so many of the earliest shamans, so many of the earliest sort of indigenous tribes, they predicted that the world would end in 2012, right? We all heard the world would end in 2012. I even watched this movie about these tornadoes in 2011, and it had sort of this religious connotation where they talked about like the holy rapture, right? Like the end of the world, and that all of God's children would be taken to heaven, right? That was a lot of the religious kind of thinking moving into 2012, right? Which was actually predicted by the Mayans in Mexico. And they predicted the world would end in 2012. And a lot of the religious idea was that we would be returned back to God, that anyone who was religious, that it was the holy rapture, was like the end of the world, and we be returned back to God. But what it actually was the end of a cycle, right? It was actually the preparatory work for the second coming of Christ. But the second coming of Christ has nothing to do with Jesus returning, but it's a lot to do with the consciousness of the symbolism that, religion got sort of contorted and moved around. And I think a lot of like what it was actually was how the feminine was so eradicated. I don't want to get into this, but the feminine was so eradicated. So it was the return of the feminine, sort of the reharmonizing and the balance of masculine and feminine energy, right? So 2012 comes and it's the end of a cycle. And now the world moves into this sort of like karmic release process where we're going to begin to have all this karma up, and it's preparing for this divine consciousness or the second coming of Christ, which is Christ consciousness. I believe this Kundalini sort of awakening and activation is very much aligned with sort of this divine Christ consciousness, which is where you're able to hold this sort of divine energy or sort of this Christ level of holy energy and move it through your body and being. And when you're in that space, it's sort of like being in an orgasmic state. So yesterday I'm sitting there and I was in this it's like being in like a low grade state of orgasm that you can just hold all day, that it doesn't go away. And just what it means is that from your crown all the way to your root, every energy center is harmonizing and in balance. And so much of the purification process is dealing with all trauma and karma that exists at every single energy center and chakra in the body, right? So a Kundalini awakening process is dealing with all of the karma imbalances and trauma that occur in every single energy center so that we can move into this fully purified vessel, right? I genuinely believe this process is happening and shifting on earth. I believe this is what the second coming of Christ is. And it's all energetically. And I believe that we're actually at the beginning of this point of arrival into this new consciousness. And so now it's back to this piece of like, it's when you move into this space, it's pretty fucking crazy when you see people just going and living their lives normally without any idea this is happening. To me, what's particularly fucking crazy is when people in this industry continue to sort of go on in their teachings normally with all this shit without even being fucking tuned into any of this. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're not even tuned into this at all? Because even my mom messages me the other day. She's like, I couldn't sleep last night. My legs kept cramping in the middle of the fucking night. My mom messaged me. She's down in California. She said, Jamie, I couldn't fucking sleep. I had to get up in the middle of the night and stretch because my legs were cramping. And my mom's like an oracle, but she's so disconnected to this shit, but she's like crazy. She's like fucking witch, but she doesn't even know it. And she was like, I couldn't fucking sleep. This was literally the night of like the solar eclipse. So like this, even my fucking mom, who's so disconnected from this shit, was feeling her legs cramping. She's like, in the middle of the night, I had to get up and stretch. And she's like, I couldn't sleep a fucking wink. So if my mom's feeling this shit, then so many people must be feeling this shit. It's becoming undeniable. And so we're in this space of arrival, which really means we're actually starting to be able to hold it. And when I really tune into it, it is tripping me the fuck out with you guys, what is happening in the world energetically, spiritually. You guys, anyone watching this, is it tripping you the fuck out what is happening? Like, do you understand how fucking crazy this is? This has never happened in the history of our time. We're literally living in the most psychic revolution of the history of Earth. This is straight up fact. This is not woo-woo. Like, do you guys listening to this, you guys, can you comprehend that, or is that too big? Is that too big to even be able to clue into? But we're at the cutting edge of that. You know, like things happen in waves, you guys. This is happening in a wave, and we're at the beginning of that wave. I know this to be fact. This is not just like, manic sort of crazy energy or sort of delusion. Like, this is factually happening, and it has been predicted. It has been predicted, and it's happening, right? And so many people are being called into these purification processes. Like when I was sitting on my patio yesterday, I literally felt like I was in a fucking rocket ship. Like, in a rocket, when the energy, you're like this and you're going up, when you see like in like space movies, when the astronauts are in that rocket ship and they're going up, I literally felt my body shaking. And I was like, oh, I am legitimately on a rocket ship designed by God. I am literally on the fucking God rocket. Energy was moving through my body literally 1,000 miles per hour this way and this way. It was an integration and emerging. And I was sitting there, just totally surrendering to it. And so I know a lot of people have been like struggling and feeling the craziness of this energy. And yesterday, I know a lot of people were feeling like, I felt like I was going to vomit yesterday. I felt like I was going to throw up, right? It was kind of like God gave everyone the morning after pill, right? Like yesterday was like God gave everyone the morning after pill. It's like, you're going to have this crazy amount of nausea. And so yesterday was sort of like this climax, and everyone felt super nauseous, sick to their stomach. A lot of like, ooh, like I don't feel well. Like, what's going on? And yesterday, Thursday, that energy was like that. Like, it was happening in all my client sessions, and then just with everyone. And I talked to a bunch of people, and everyone was experiencing the same thing. Even people that aren't spiritual were like, I don't feel well. So it's fucking crazy. You understand that God gave everyone the fucking morning after pill. It's like, I'm going to fuck this shit up a little bit. But it was giving us something that our body couldn't hold, right? And usually what happens, we're like, when that energy comes, we sort of freak the fuck out. We're like, ooh. Usually when that sort of God energy comes, like what it triggers is a fight or flight response in our system. So how many of you guys are watching? When that crazy energy comes, you move into more of a fight or flight in your nervous system. You move into more of this sort of fear, threat response. This energy is coming into your system. You're like, ooh, like I can't fucking hold this. If we're experiencing nausea, it means we're moving outside of our capacity. Nausea is like one of the biggest signs whenever you're working in the nervous system that you're sort of exceeding your capacity. But the crazy thing that happens, you guys, in these ascension processes, God doesn't really give a fuck about your capacity. Like they call it in somatic therapy, they call it like titration. Is that how you fucking spell the word? Like they call it titration, which is working really within your zone of tolerance. God does not give a fuck about titration. God's like, I'm just gonna fucking blast you. I'm gonna fucking blast you. And that's why these ascension processes, that's why they're so challenging, because God does not give a fuck about your capacity. God don't give a fuck about your capacity. He's not going to give you anything you can't handle, but he's not going to like he's not going to give you energy like, oh, like, Jamie, I'm just going to like feed you this little bit of energy within your zone of tolerance because I know you can't handle anymore. I'm just going to give you just a little bit. I'm just going to give you like a little bit. God doesn't do that. He's like, I'm going to blast this bitch. I'm going to blast this motherfucker. I'm going to give him so much energy. You understand like how God and the divine loves to flex. Like, I'm just going to like, yesterday was one of those days where God and sort of the divine was like, "Ooh, baby, let's just fuck up everyone. Let's fuck up everyone." They're doing it for our own good, but you understand how they're playing with us? It's like a wild animal out in the jungle playing with their food before they eat it. Like, God right now is playing with us. It's like playing with our food before he fucking devours us. And so this is all to say that we're going to be fed shit that's outside of our zone of tolerance. That's why you felt nauseous. That's why you felt like you were going to vomit. God blasted you. He gave you the morning after pill, and then he started to laugh. He's like, oh, you feel sick? Oh, it's too bad. You feel sick. You feel sick. Well, maybe you need to feel sick so you can actually begin to hold your power. Because that's what it was about, right? The reason why we felt sick was because the amount of divine consciousness, the amount of expansive energy that was coming into our space felt like a little bit too much. And so there is this purification process where we're literally trying to move into this alternative, those both work, this alternative universe where you can fully feel your power. What it sort of feels like, if we could describe it, it's sort of like you're enthralled in a blanket of bliss. It's sort of like you're enthralled with this energy of sort of like low-grade ecstasy. It's sort of like you're enthralled with this energy where you feel really calm and still, but everything feels really fucking vibrant. Ooh. It's like all the colors have higher definition. Everything sounds a little more pure. All of a sudden you like look at someone, you're like, what the fuck? You look different. Like you look at someone, you're like, you look different. Like it feels like you're on mushrooms. Like this is the best way to explain what's happening in these. You feel like you're on mushrooms. You feel like you're probably on like 1.5 grams of mushrooms. It's not like a hero's dose, but you feel like you're on like 1.5 grams of mushrooms. Like you're not hallucinating, but you're like everything feels different. Like that's what happens in these sort of liminal forms of consciousness. And it's trying to move into this place where God's trying to like wrap you in a blanket of bliss. Do you guys feel that? You guys, I'm curious, as I've just haven't shut the fuck up here for a minute. Do you guys feel this like blanket of bliss, even at just some level trying to come into your space? And again, Robin sort of alluded to like, you feel like you're covered in poop and then you feel like you're in a blanket of bliss. You're covered in poop and then you're infused in a blanket of bliss. This is all part of a purification process. This is all part of a purification process. But I'm curious, do you guys feel that low grade sort of ecstasy, that kind of blanket of bliss trying to come into your space? Do you guys feel that? And I'll just sit here until someone answers. Robin W. said, someone asked me today if we have collectively shifted into a new dimension recently, or are they imagining it? He asks, is this happening for everyone? And is this really happening? Oh, yeah. You guys, and even people who don't believe in this shit, they're like, ooh, like I feel weird, but they don't admit it, right? They kind of like they're like, I feel fucking crazy right now. I feel so something's weird, but they hold that shit in. They're like, ooh, I can't admit that. I can't admit that because then it just changes our reality, right? It just fucks up our reality. If we admit this is happening, we're like, what am I opening myself up to? You understand that? Like, if we show God any sort of curiosity, and this is what happens with awakenings. This is why people who are afraid of their power, like, I can't show God any curiosity. Like, you guys get that? I can't show God any sort of curiosity. I got to prove to God that I'm not curious. I'm not curious. It's like, you guys, if you're curious, if you're curious about your sexuality, like if you're a guy and you're curious about your sexuality, you're probably pretty soon after going to end up with a cock in your mouth, right? If you're a guy and you're pretty and you're sort of curious about your sexuality, you're going to end up with a cock in your mouth at some point pretty soon, right? It's just that sort of like when you open up to that curiosity, you're going to open yourself up to that possibility of probably happening. So if you show God any sort of curiosity of like, and as Robin said, someone's asking, is this really happening? If you start to believe this is happening, then God is literally just going to like infiltrate your space. And all of a sudden, it's just going to facilitate this crazy sort of awakening. So that's why a lot of people are like, my butthole's tingling a little bit. I'm feeling something. My nipples are titillizing a little bit. You know what I mean? Or I feel like my throat is like what the fuck is my throat's being like grabbed or something. But if you admit it, then you're going to start sucking those imaginary dicks from the divine, right? You're going to start sucking those imaginary dicks from the divine. So you have to be like, nothing's happening. Everything's normal. And that's why people are like, what are you, Jamie? Nothing is happening. Everything is totally normal, because they don't want that imaginary divine dick to come out of nowhere that shows them that they're curious about their spirituality. You can't show any sort of curiosity about your spirituality. But what's happening now is this undeniable force is coming. And through this sort of eclipse, you know what I mean? And here's the thing too, you guys know how many people talk about eclipses and polarity, but they're not actually in this purification like, oh my God, the fucking eclipse. Oh my God. I feel like I'm being reborn. The eclipse, I feel like I'm being reborn. It's like, you're not being reborn. Come on. You're not in this fucking purification process, because this doesn't even fucking have anything to do with astrology. Astrology is just like the tip of the dick, right? Astrology is like the tip of the dick. Like, there's so much more to this process than astrology. That's why they're like, fucking polarity, masculine, feminine. Oh, the solar eclipse, fucking all this shit. It's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the tip of the dick. This is so much bigger than that. And that's why it astounds me when you look online and people aren't talking about, there's like people that are carrying on as normal right now. They think we're crazy. I'm like, you're fucking crazy. How are you carrying on like normal when the second coming of Christ is happening? And they're like, oh, just carrying on as fucking normal, just doing my shit. And there's people that have been carrying on like normal since the pandemic. Just like, just linear, just moving forward. Do you know how fucking crazy that is? You know how like sociopathic that is? Do you know how like psychotic that is? If we've just been carrying on like normal, this fucking crazy. You guys, this is the most unprecedented fucking time in our history. This is so crazy. And it's like, when people don't get it, I'm like, well, you will one day. And if you will one day, and it's like, you guys, and I want to say this, you know what I've had come in my space so much recently? Thank God I am not fucking normal. Thank God I am not normal. Who's feeling that right now? Thank God I am not a normal human being. Thank God. Because if I was someone who wasn't tuned to any of this, and I was just carrying on like normal, and I knew that this was available, you know how tragic that would be? If we're just carrying on like normal, eating and shitting, brushing our teeth, in some sort of fucking basic relationship, just fucking commuting to the suburbs to fucking go to work, and this was out there, it's like, you could be on ecstasy, but you're not. But the thing is, they don't even know. But you guys, I'm curious if that resonates. I'm so happy I'm not normal. What it kind of feels like is you're like an alien that's returning to your home planet. So like when I say that I'm going on a God rocket, I know that I'm returning to my planet of origin. Who's feeling that? You're returning to your planet of origin right now. But you're finally saying that I'm cool with being a fucking alien. I am so happy that I'm not normal. And here's the important part about this. You start to embrace this path when you begin to feel the privilege of that power, right? So when you're like, what happens is you're like, God, I wish I were normal. Do you guys really want to be normal? Do you really want to commute to the fucking suburbs have some basic relationship where you never really have a fucking orgasm and you don't get fucked to God, and you're like, fuck, there's more out there. Yeah, you could be on ecstasy. You could feel like you're on God's natural heroin. You could feel like there's an imaginary energetic snake that's moving and slithering through your whole fucking body, bringing you to a state of orgasm. And you could experience that, or you could be normal. Which one do you guys want? Do you guys want to be on God's heroin, or do you want to commute to the fucking suburbs and be with a guy that's never going to go down on you? Like which one do you want? Right? Because the options are right there. But what happens is you start to embrace the fact that you're not normal when you begin to experience the benefits of this power. It moves from being a burden to being a privilege. It moves from being a burden to being a privilege. I had a client recently who was talking about just the burden of this. I was like, I bet you in a week that is going to completely, and this was the beginning of us working together. It was right before we had a session. I was like, give me a week, and I bet you will all of a sudden be like, thank God I'm like this. This is the greatest fucking privilege I've ever experienced. Sure enough, in a week, after one session, he comes on the call, and he's literally got this massive smile on his face. And everything has shifted. He finally, for the first time in his life, felt grounded. He's like, I literally feel like I'm a fifth dimensional human being, but I can also live in the third dimension, right? He's like, I'm in these meetings at work, and I'm like, I'm so much more powerful than everyone here. But you're able to live in that world. And so all of a sudden he began to experience the other side of this initiation. So when someone's like, this is a burden, what it really means is their power hasn't integrated. Their power has been a kryptonite. It's like fucking Superman or Spider-Man or these superheroes, how your power is a kryptonite until you begin to experience the integration. So if you've never been able to experience the privilege of this path, it means that your power is never actually integrated, right? If you have never experienced the privilege of this path, because what happens is you literally have this in your space. Thank God I'm not normal. What a fucking privilege. What a fucking privilege to feel like a fucking alien here on Earth. And when you begin to feel like that, it means that you're beginning to arrive. When you begin to say to yourself with this graciousness, what a privilege that this is my path, it means that you're beginning to arrive. You're beginning to arrive in this embodied divine consciousness. And if you're like, oh, this is such a fucking burden, and it's okay to feel like that at times, but if collectively that's what you're saying, you're also saying, I don't want to be in my power. You're also saying, I don't want to be in my power. But the thing that happens, and this is where this becomes a little bit counterintuitive, is that you have to experience the greatest levels of experiencing this is a fucking burden before you break through to this is a privilege. You have to experience the heaviness. Because what happens in this purification process is you experience the greatest levels of density you've ever encountered, right? The greatest level. You're like, oh my God, I feel so energetically dense and heavy. And when you feel energetically dense and heavy, it feels like a burden, right? And this has a lot more meaning to it, because so much of what you're doing and leaving the pain body and moving more into like a light body, you heard this term, you're moving into your light body or becoming a light being that all these cucks online are always talking about. But what it really means is you're shedding and eradicating the cloak and this sort of trench coat of pain, right? That the lineage is held onto. And so like a really big theme, a lot of people are finally getting rid of the pain from the family line. They're shedding pain that no longer belongs to them. And they're saying that I finally deserve to move in my power, or I'm finally ready. And when you begin to arrive, I'm not holding this anymore. It doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to me. So you're pushing that pain all the way back to its rightful owners, right? And so right before you arrive, you're going to experience the deepest levels of, ooh, fuck, this is such a burden. This is such a burden, right? And you're going to see it, and then it's going to shift. And what it's going to change from this is a burden to this is the greatest privilege of my life. Who here watching has moved more into an energy of this path and this purification process is the greatest privilege of my life? Who here is starting to feel that? Who here is starting to feel that this path is the great? And it's totally okay if you're in the space of this is a burden. This is a burden. That totally, because you have to experience that before you get to the other side. So Robin, even when I feel covered in shit, I can feel the bliss, actually. Yep. It's like the shit doesn't stick to you heavy enough that you can't see the bliss. So like the shit is covering your face. You have shit on your face, but then you can like see some of the glitter and the magic outside, so the shit doesn't fully bury you. I think that's what Robin's getting at, is that the shit covers her eyes, but you can still see through the shit. It's like a really thin piece of shit. Or it's like there's spaces between the pieces of shit that she's able to still see the bliss. Yup, they don't want to admit it. You can't know this until you're here. You have to be expanded into it. It takes training to be able to get on the rocket. Yeah. Well, Robin, think about it like this. Like, do you think, and it's changing because of fucking Elon Musk, or Dickface, as maybe we'll call him. You don't just go into space. Like, I know fucking Dickface Musk is changing that, but you don't just you have to train to be an astronaut. You don't just all of a sudden get put in a fucking rocket and there you go. You have to train for that. You know what I mean? Because, you have to train to be able to, how are you going to live in zero gravity? How are you going to be able to use all the controls of this spaceship? That is kind of what's happening. Like, our bodies are spaceships, right? Our bodies are spaceships, but it takes a while to be able to learn what all the controls do, right? Your body is a spaceship, but right now you're probably on a bike with one gear, and you're like, phew, this bike has one fucking gear, and I'm overwhelmed, right? But you're like, I want to go to space. How do I get on the God rocket? Well, you got to do a lot of training, right? You're going to get a lot of motion sickness when you're in space. Like, when you go into space, like, you have to learn to shit in zero gravity, right? Which means when you shit, you have to put a seatbelt on. I'm being in space is kind of training for like what happens when you lose control of all your bodily functions, right? That's training for old age when you go to space. I have to shit with a seatbelt on because I'm going to fall off the toilet, right? You have to train for that, right? You're on a bike with one gear. You're not just going to get sent to space. And so if the God rocket is where we're trying to get to, and you will get there, And when you get there, it is sort of like experiencing arrival. And so where we're at right now is we're beginning to arrive. 2025 is endings and beginnings. It is death and birth. 2026 will be full arrival, full new beginnings. And so you guys are probably like, and you guys can even comment, like, you guys are wrapping things, like, it feels like wrapping up an old timeline to step into a new timeline. That's what this year feels like. It feels like the convergence between those two. You're wrapping up an old timeline and you're stepping into a new timeline. That's what this year is. And so there's going to be a lot of like really identifying what doesn't serve you and what you're sort of done with, and really identifying like, where am I really going and what am I really ready to step into? Like, what is really available to me in my system? And what you're probably going to notice a lot of in this year too, and what are we in April? So we're just heading to the beginning of quarter two, the beginning of the second quarter. You're going to notice a lot of like, and this is really aligning with all this sort of liminal consciousness that's been happening. You're going to notice things that really felt unavailable to you, let's say 2 years ago, are really going to be at the surface, right? And so things that weren't available to you are really going to be at the surface. You're noticing a lot of like throat chakra, areas that you just couldn't speak your truth, that you've been disconnected from your truth. And so when the throat chakra is really coming online, it's sort of like, I'm ready to speak this into existence, right? So a lot of that, like, what are you ready to speak yourself into existence? And so a lot of this is like, claiming what you're about to step into, claiming what you're ready for, and really using that in cohesion with what your system feels available to you. And so there's a massive upgrade into what your system and your body's capacity is going to be able to hold in more of these spaces of joy, bliss, ecstasy, pleasure, true alignment with source and God, the amount of energy you're going to be able to hold into your body. So a lot of throat chakra, a lot of sacral, a lot of creative energy. It could be like a creative project that felt unavailable to you that now you feel available to step into. But so the reason why everything's been so confusing, and the reason why, so for example, if people are having a really, really hard time still with what's happening, the truth is it probably means you're quite out of alignment with that God level truth in your body, right? That true sort of pure ecstasy of source. It probably means that your body is holding so much still that it can't hold that frequency, which is fine, But that energy is being thrust. And so people that are probably at this point in time able to move on to a God rocket, it probably means they've been in this process for quite a long time and they're ready. And if you're not ready, that's fine, right? It's going to meet us at whatever level or layer we are at in our process, right? And so it's just asking, what is that for us? What does that mean for us? Because when we use the term, I'm ready to move on to a God rocket, what it really means is that you're just going through a big upgrade. Probably the biggest upgrade that you've ever gone through at one time, probably. And so in your own sort of relational sort of relative space, you're getting on the God rocket. So my question to you guys is, what does the God rocket to you mean right now? Like for you to get on a God rocket right now, like at this juncture, April 2025, to begin to get on that God rocket, like what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? Like, what does that look like? It could be like a general feeling, or it could be something really, really specific. But what it probably means is something around, you're going to claim your power more. You're going to claim your truth. You're going to claim your genius. And some really big themes are like, we're moving out of, and probably what you guys have noticed, there's been a lot of scarcity the past 8 months, a lot of fear, a lot of scarcity. And that is really, when you get on a God rocket, you move into a level of abundance that you've never experienced. You move out of this sort of like fear-driven scarcity consciousness into, I'm finally going to give myself permission for good things to happen to me. I'm finally going to give myself permission for good things to happen to me. Because when you begin to arrive, you're finally saying, I deserve to feel really fucking good. I deserve to be in pleasure, right? And that's so much of like when you're shedding and eradicating this pain body and you're telling yourself, I deserve to feel good. I deserve to, and that's when a lot of that Kundalini energy, that Kundalini sort of merging and integration, that sort of orgasmic state will begin to come. Because what you're saying is that I'm finally ready to hold feeling good at this level of my life. And your process and your path has been about liberating you so that you can feel as good as you're capable of feeling. And that's where abundance comes from. And so you guys, so much of when that sort of orgasmic state comes, a lot of it has to do with your sacral energy, your vitality, your life force energy, your creativity, your sexual energy, that you don't hold that part with guilt or shame, that you allow it to expand and circulate and infuse all through your body. That's going to be your direct tie to abundance, right? It's how alive do you feel? So Robin just put the word courage. And what's really going to be true, and that word courage is interesting, because I feel like right now we're probably beginning to feel some courage to step into some areas of our life that felt really confronting even 8 months ago. And they probably still feel confronting or scary. But courage is probably beginning to feel a lot stronger than it has been, where you're like, whew, I think I might actually be able to step into that now. I think I might actually be able to open that door. I might actually be able to open that door. I might be able to leave that relationship. I might be able to call in that relationship. I might be able to move to that place, to move to a level of expression in my business or my creativity. I might actually be able to claim those gifts that I know that I have, but I've been pretty apprehensive of and shut down from. Yeah, Robin says surrender. Well, surrender and courage are the same thing. Surrender and courage to have courage, you need to surrender to God. To have courage is to surrender to the truth of God, which is trying to come through, to the truth of source, to the truth of the divine. To have courage means to, with every ounce of your being, to surrender to truth. That's what courage means. It means that I know this to be true. And so something has probably been speaking to you through the month of March, now coming into April. There's been something that's been speaking to you. Your intuition has probably been razor sharp in a way that you've never experienced. Truth has been alive in you. And you guys, all divine consciousness is just truth embodied. Divine consciousness is truth embodied, so pure to source and spirit. Divine consciousness is truth embodied, so pure to source and soul. So true, right? Like when you're in a Kundalini activation, it just means your body is embodying the frequency of truth unobstructed. It means that your own sort of karma and your trauma is not blocking the flow of truth. That's what that means. And so there's probably been something that's been speaking to you, that's been coming to the surface. Maybe it's, again, something specific, or maybe it's like changing your life in drastic ways. But it's trying to show you that now this is available to you. Now, maybe you'll have the courage and the capacity to surrender and to trust in God in this way that you weren't able to 6 months ago. You weren't able to 2 years ago. And you're able to make that leap, because what's happening is through this sort of portal that we've been in, is that level of pure truth, that unfiltered, pure, holy truth is coming to the surface. And that's why we're confused, right? Because the ego gets blasted and it gets eradicated, pushed to the side, and then has to come back and reintegrate. And then we start to be like, okay, I think I'm figuring out what this world is a little bit, right? But initially we're so thrown off. And then we start to embody a little more of this reality, and we're able to live and maintain a level of truth. It's a massive timeline jump. And when you're jumping timelines, the ego moves aside. When you land on the new timeline, the ego comes back and reintegrates. And now a level of truth begins to permeate your reality. And this is why certain connections fall away, because people that are so not in line with the level of truth that you embody fall to a different timeline, where it's sure you can connect with them, but it feels like you're having to travel. Your frequencies are so misaligned to do with a level of embodied or disembodied truth, right? And that's why like some connections fall away, some connections come towards you. You know, certain places don't resonate anymore because the level of truth that you embody is categorized to a frequency or a vibration. And sometimes it doesn't align, right? It's so energetic. To master spirituality means to master energy. To master spirituality means to master energy. So when you start to move into more of an area of spiritual mastery, it means that you're really learning how energy works, how energy moves, transforms, how it creates, how it speaks to us, all these sort of different things, right? And so there's been something, you guys, that's been speaking to you. So sort of the action to that is like, what right now, relative to you in your life, where you're at and what you have the capacity for, what does moving on to this God rocket mean, right? What is embodying sort of this divine consciousness for you right now? What does that mean at this juncture? Because again, you're probably going to have more trust, more surrender, more courage that's been available to you right now. And I think a lot of what's happening is we're trying to learn to hold our power and a level of joy and bliss in our bodies at a new space of regulation, right? Where you can actually hold our power in a way that feels more sustainable, in a way that hadn't felt so sustainable to us we're like, ooh, like it just feels more available to me. And really what it means, you guys, is that when you sort of like you feel into the space around you, everything feels really expansive. It feels really bright. Rather than looking out at the world for everything that could go wrong, all you do is see possibility. You see possibility for creation. You're more in like a creative sort of divine consciousness as opposed to more of like a caveman or a cave woman sort of fear indoctrinated, trauma inspired reality of constantly looking how everything's going wrong, right? And you're sort of looking in that space, and when you're in that space, the reality you call in is going to mirror and confirm sort of that caveman, cave women sort of fear collapsing reality. But when you're in a space of possibility, your reality is going to kind of mirror that frequency, and it's going to build up momentum and steam. Where all of a sudden it's going to become so undeniable to you. And so what's really big, you guys, is claim your genius right now. A big reason why you haven't been able to move into certain levels of abundance in your life is because you've never really felt safe to claim your genius, your brilliance, and your gifts in a certain way. And that's a big part of what's happening right now. Can you, like, your gifts and whatever's trying to come through you, can you claim that and own that and be the biggest champion and fan of that inside of yourself? Because when you begin to do that, you're going to start to experience the massive privilege of this path. It's not going to feel like a burden. It's going to feel like such incredible privilege. And what you're going to say, and honestly, now, and it took me a long time to get here, but now I'm at the point where every day I wake up and I say, thank God I'm not normal. Thank God. It's like holding the secret to the universe in your space. It's like holding the secret to the universe for you, because it's all a little bit different, right? But it's like you're holding the secret to the universe in your body. And you're going around and you're engaging with your life, but you have the secret to the universe in your body. And you earned it. You walked the path to get to that point. How insanely crazy amazing is that? To have walked the path to get to that point where you're like, I earned this. I'm ready to arrive into this. And then it feels like, and that's what happens. And I don't mean for this to be woo-woo, but when the fifth dimension of consciousness merges with the 3D, and this is where we're going, where you can live in the 3-dimensional reality, but you're a light being of consciousness, right? That's where you don't have to go to, and this is why this is threatening the spiritual matrix, because it's showing that you can be this divine light being just in the mundane and the ordinary. You could be out having a coffee. You can be out having a beer or out for dinner, and you can be in sort of this infused blanket of bliss of divine consciousness. And you can be in the 5th dimension merged with the 3rd dimension. You can be in both those pieces together. And just your body, your being exists in this 3rd dimension, but the consciousness that moves through it is of the 5th dimension. You don't have to leave your body, it arrives in your body. And this is threatening kind of spaces like the spiritual matrix, because first off, it's confronting the ego that has with people who use spirituality as a way to leave the body or find these heightened states of consciousness through different ways without fully being here, right? And it confronts everything that their ego has sort of identified with their reality, that you can be in the 5th dimension right here. This is why I always talk about terms like the street shamans are coming. Like, I refer to myself as like a street shaman, meaning just like an ordinary purpose that for whatever reason started to move into some of these pathways of how to merge into a fifth dimension without doing any of the spiritual shit. And I think for me, there was a reason why I was never meant to be someone who is meant to come into this through typical spiritual community, right? And typical sort of spiritual measures. That it was meant to kind of be this street shaman, this sort of bringing the healers to the streets, because I think this is what this new wave is about, is really, it's bringing God just in the body, that it doesn't have to be this outside the body experience, and it threatens the spiritual matrix, right? Because you see a lot of the spiritual and self-development communities, they don't feel like if you're spiritually embodied, it should feel like total fucking freedom. But I feel like a word that is more apt to describe the self-development and spiritual communities is actually containment. You see most quote unquote spiritual matrix people, they don't feel free. They feel more in patterns of containment, right? Whereas your spirituality should feel like total unobstructed freedom. It should feel like making art with your body. It means painting from a canvas that has never truly existed before, right? True spiritual embodiment is total unobstructed freedom. But I feel like so much of this, the quote unquote spiritual matrix, is more of a containment model, more of the self-development, right? It's containment, right? And that's never really sat right with me, right? That containment model kills the inner artist, right? And I feel like spirituality is the ultimate artist of life. It's this freedom of living and vitality and spirit. It's like hopping onto a God rocket. It's like hopping onto a fucking God rocket. So you guys, what is the God rocket to you? What is Apollo Jamie? Or what is Apollo fucking Robin, right? What is that? Apollo 444, right? I want to see that fucking movie. Apollo 444, where they're not astronauts, but they're fucking light beings. And maybe what they do is they send a bunch of shamans into space. You know, it's like that movie. What was that fucking Ben Affleck movie where, fucking Armageddon, right? Where they send a bunch of oil drillers. You know, I want to see that movie, Apollo 444, where they send a bunch of fucking shamans into outer space because they embody outer space in their body. So all of a sudden these shamans go to outer space. They know what to do. Wouldn't that be funny? You send a bunch of shamans into outer space because they have the fucking solar system in their nuts, right? They don't send a bunch of oil drillers like Armageddon. They send a bunch of shamans and light beings that have the whole fucking planetary system in their body, and all these shamans are in outer space and they know what to do. Fucking doing a spacewalk. They're doing a fucking space crip walk. Fucking Michael Jackson. They just know how to do it because they've embodied this shit. That's what I'm talking about, you guys. What does Apollo look like for you? What does Apollo 13 look like for you? So maybe if you guys want to just put in the comment section as we sort of wrap up here, what is stepping on the God rocket for you in your life right now? What does that look like? You can even just put a word. Maybe it's one word. Maybe it's one word. If you want to put what that word is in the chat section, or anything you want to put, like, what is stepping onto that God rocket right now look for you? Because it's kind of this feeling where you're being taken up, fucking, because when you fully surrender, you will move on to the God rocket. You'll be like this. And what it means is you're surrendering to your power. It means you're surrendering to your power, right? And so when you're fighting against the surrender of your power, you're not quite on that God rocket. You're like, fuck. Maybe I'll go to space tomorrow. Right? But you're holding on, embracing. And so we're being asked to fully surrender to that power. Right now, you're being asked to fully surrender to what is great inside of you, your genius inside of you. You're being asked to fully surrender to that. And so when your power feels a little apprehensive or there's hesitation, engage in this practice of how can I fully surrender to my power that's coming through me, to my genius that's coming through me? How can I surrender to all of this and allow this power to infuse my vessel? If you're imagining the energy coming down from your crown, just imagine that you're fully surrendering to your crown. I'm fully going to allow the energy to infuse me. I'm fully going to surrender to the bliss and the joy that is trying to come through me. I am fully going to surrender here. And when you fully surrender, you will begin to feel the courage to move forward. You will begin to feel the courage to move forward. Again, surrender and courage are very synonymous. You surrender fully, you begin to feel more available courage to move forward. So Robin W. says, letting people feel me, carrying and transmitting the message. Letting people feel me, carrying and transmitting the message. I want to say this, you guys, as we sort of leave off here, and this will be the last thing that I say, that when it comes to stepping into your power, when it comes to like going all the way on the spiritual path, what it really means is how you welcome or doubt the messages that come through you. So when a lot of people feel this spiritual call, but they're not really on the path, or they really struggle on the path, typically what it means is they have some semblance of doubt of what moves through them. Does that resonate for you guys? That when we sort of struggle on the spiritual path, or we have a lot of suffering, it means that there's some level of doubt inside of us that whatever is trying to come through us, that we're like, well, maybe that's not the case. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Well, maybe this isn't true. And when you start to like go all the way and your spiritual path starts to become so expansive and so free, is when whatever comes through you, you kind of start to treat it as fact in scripture. Whatever comes through you, you start to treat it, oh yeah, like that's 100%. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And it's like that level of trust in what comes through you. Then your spiritual path starts to fucking explode. But when so many people, they're like, maybe this is wrong. That's the same thing as doubting your power. It's the same thing as doubting your power. And that's where suffering continues to really plague your path. That's where you're in conflict. You're in conflict internally. You're not truly free because you doubt what's coming through you to some degree. You don't trust the message or the sovereignty of your being. And so in the space like what's happening right now, where the psychic and spirit realms are collapsing together, whatever comes through you, you're being asked to fully go all the way with what's coming through you, to fully walk towards it. I guarantee whatever message is coming through you right now is dead on factual. Whatever message is coming through you right now is dead on factual. You know, maybe you're feeling this pull to leave, to move, right? Or that a relationship is coming. Like, what would happen if you treated that as scripture from the divine? What would happen if you treated that as scripture from the divine? You would start to feel so fucking powerful and so free and so abundant. Everything would explode and expand. So that's what I want to leave you guys with. Don't doubt what's coming through you. Do not doubt it. Treat it as fact. Treat it as scripture. That's what it means to be spiritually powerful. People that start to move into like, and again, you know, you never really achieve spiritual mastery, but to move onto this path where you start to move into that place where you really learn how these energies work. People that move into that sort of more spiritual mastery place is really, they don't doubt what comes through them. They treat it as scripture. Okay. You know, yep. And they take action on what comes through them. And it's this real, and their intuition raises vibration, moves into total union with source. And they don't doubt what comes through their channel. And they just follow it unequivocally. And that's where the magic is created. And that's where your power comes from, your spiritual power. So don't doubt what's coming through you guys. If you guys have any questions now, feel free to pop them. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about here, guys, feel free to put your questions in the chat section. You can also ask your question as a comment underneath the replay of the video. You can ask me a question through my Instagram DMs if you want. But yeah, if you have any questions about anything I went through here, guys, feel free to pop that in the chat section. If you guys like this video, please give it a like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, if you wouldn't mind subscribing so that you can be notified when I go live. I don't think I'm going to keep going live for that much longer. because some different things I'm launching, and I'm going to go live in there. But I'll probably be going live for this month and probably next month too. And then that's going to shift. So if you enjoy these, I would encourage you to show up here every Friday, because yeah, this is probably the second to last month I'm going to be doing. It's not like I'll never go live once I launch these other things where I'm probably going to go live and stream in there, but I won't be going live on a regular weekly basis once those things come to fruition. So if you guys have any questions, pop it in the chat section. If not, I'm going to get out of here. So I'll hang out for like 1 minute. Any questions, you guys, feel free to put them in the chat section there. Any questions, pop them in. If not, guys, I'm wishing you a great weekend. Go get on that rocket ship, you guys. Go board that rocket. Go board that rocket. Let it go. Let it go. Step on that rocket, baby. Just step in, strap on, and let it ride, you know? Let it go. Surrender. Let your crown fucking explode. Let your crown chakra fucking explode until just that God energy just splatters all over the place. Open that root, you know? Give yourself that little divine God tail. You know, just let all that pain wash away, you guys. Let that pain wash away and that bliss to infuse you like a warm blanket as the energy just expands all around you as far as the horizon can see. No questions. All right. All you Mr. and Mrs. Know-it-alls don't have any questions. All right. Wishing you all a great weekend. And I'll see you guys in outer space when we get returned into the atmosphere as ancient stardust, back to where it all began a long, long time ago. Be well. We'll see you in the next timeline. Goodbye.